We have all sorts of challenges in this NGO world today, as everybody else in the world does. Funding sources are changing. Funding sources are becoming more scarce. Scrutiny is greater. We need to be more accountable. Not only us, anywhere, any organization like ours in the world is under these kind of pressures. Canada is the same as other countries. Our present government has cut back in various areas, is looking for different things, is looking for partnerships, is looking for funding sources from places other than themselves. And we know this, and we knew this at this time last year as well. They're good changes in many ways for the world. If you can be more accountable, if you can expand your funding sources, this is good, having more people participate in things. But having said that, it's difficult. It's really difficult for organizations like ours and others to make these changes, to look to see where we can go as our traditional funding sources dry up and as accountability increases and what we do about it. We on the board understand the criticality of this, very much so, and in fact we're very, very focused on it. Let me deal first of all with the funding sources. The first question is partnerships. We need to have the messaging from our funding sources of tradition are partnerships. We need to consolidate our picture when we go and look for funding from the traditional sources. Last year at this time, frankly, we were not that well positioned to do so. We were just beginning to get positioned to do so. And our executive have been spending a huge amount of time on creating relationships with other NGOs so that and when the time comes and as the future unfolds, we're able to speak to them, to work with them, and to move ahead on that basis. And there's some stories of great success that we've had in that regard already this year. And we certainly expect and intend to have such successes in the years to come, most particularly in some of the critical traditional funding arrangements that are upcoming. For example, with the next round of talks with CEDA, which happen very, very soon. December, I think, is when the proposals, etc., start coming out. So we're very focused on that. Secondly, with regard to funding sources outside of the partnership game, your board is very, very focused on it. The activity and qualifications that we've looked for in the board are directed specifically towards this issue. We have 3 market-facing programs, and this is a change. In previous years, where we were battling restructuring situations and cost control and so on and so forth, and by no means suggesting that we don't have some of those issues still, but our focus was inward. Our focus was accounting and finance. Our focus was looking at the inside operations of KESO and making sure that we could streamline properly. And a lot of work was done there, and it was very painful. In the last year, we've turned that around in the sense of that we're looking outward. We're not looking inwards, we're looking outwards. We're looking at the marketplace for funding sources. And we're looking at it in 3 different ways, plus a 4th way, which is a different thing I'll come to in a second. The 3 ways are, we have an international group. This is a group of the subcommittee of the board that is looking at international funding sources, working with the KESO executive. And people who have great experience in this area are within that subcommittee of the board, looking at how we can look for alternative sources to international funding from the governmental side, but not necessarily only the one that we have been concentrating on up until now. That's one. Another is the national program. And similarly, we've got a subgroup of the board with people, again, who have lots of background in this arena, looking at where we can get alternative funding for the national programs other than from our traditional provider. And also how we relate to our traditional provider in a stronger and better way. And then finally, we have a corporate group. This is a group that, and this is the newest of the initiatives at KESO because it doesn't include any traditional funding source. Looking at the corporate world to see how we can diversify and get into partnerships with some of the corporations in Canada and have them support us in achieving the goals that we all have regarding creating a situation with better lives and sustainable economic activity around the world and in Canada. We have, during the year, strengthened our position in this regard by bringing on 2 new board members. Glenn Nolan, who is part of our national group, has great experience in the Aboriginal community and also specifically in the extraction industries. And this is a very important part of our potential diversification of revenue. Glenn has worked on both sides of the house in terms of the extraction business with regards to the Aboriginal peoples, working with the Aboriginal people and working with corporate Canada in talking to the Aboriginal peoples as to how to best move ahead with extraction and doing it in such a way that it works for everybody. So his experience is going to be huge and great for us, and already is showing itself very strongly in that regard. Another hole that we wanted to fill, so to speak, and I know this was spoken about last time at the meeting in Toronto, was that we did not have sufficient connection to the Montreal Francophone business community. And this is a critical part of our Canadian landscape. And we really needed to fulfill that and in order to access that part of the marketplace. And I'm very delighted to say that with the addition of Sept, who's very well known in the Francophone business community, we have, I believe, strengthened our position greatly there, and we're expecting great things from that quarter as well. We still do have a hole in Western Canada. We have good representation in Western Canada, but we do have a hole in the oil and gas industry, which is probably, I would say not probably, is the driver of finance in Canada today. And as you will see in the nominations discussion, we have a plan to try and deal with that. So this is not just all planning and chat and strategy and everything else, it's actual action. There's action on the ground going on. Action in all of those committees who meet every quarter, and some of them more frequently, meeting as a group, but then undertake activities between the meetings. And there are personal activities and personal commitments that are made by your board members that are very critical to our success. And remember that people are not happy to use their contacts unless they are comfortable with the story that they can take to them, because contacts are like currency. If you use them too flippantly, it devalues. So we need to be positioned properly before we go and use our contacts, which means it's a slow process. It's a slow process to convince people to do it, and it's a slow process to get through that door. But we are getting through the door, and I can tell you that in corporate Canada, we are already in significant conversations with very big companies. Goldcorp, which is one of the large, probably one of the largest gold-producing companies in the world, with the Royal Bank of Canada, with several of the suppliers to the auto industry, with TELUS Communications, which is one of the large telecommunications providers, just to name a few, and others that we are working on. So this is not theory, this is not chat, this is not talk, this is action. And this is necessary, it's critical for our success in the future. The other area of diversification is fundraising. Now, fundraising is something that very few people like to hear about and like to be asked about. Certainly I'm one of them too. But we've engaged in discussions with outside experts as to how to deal with fundraising and how to get campaigns going. And it is a new area to us at KESO. One of the things that they told us was that it is absolutely critical when you go on a fundraising campaign that you are able to say that 100% of your board participates. And if you look at the annual financial statements of last year, you will see that this is the case. And that's an important bench, apparently, so I'm told, and it's one that we will keep up this year. So that's a start, but it's just a start. And we really need a lot of action on the fundraising platform, and we have a program, and Wendy will talk somewhat about it, to move this ahead to some really significant goals. But in the meantime, there's some really good stories out there, and in particular, this year we have a very significant donation from a lead VA, and somebody in this very room with us. And I'd like Brian Belkin to stand up for a second, if he's in the room. There he is. Brian. Brian has donated $10,000 to KESO on personal levels. Thank you very much. Really, you know, these these are difficult times on fundraising, but they're also difficult times on scrutiny. Everything you do is looked at. Everything that our funders, traditional funders, are going to fund, they expect all sorts of accountability, they expect all sorts of reporting and so on that they didn't in previous years. Not a bad thing, and actually we're well positioned for it, but we have to get even better, and we've done a lot of work, and Sherry's group has done an incredible amount of work in terms of developing follow-up capability and quality control and scrutiny and so on, and I know that was a discussion, part of the discussion yesterday. So it's something that really has to happen, and also the development of our services, and Wendy will talk about those. You know, the real question is balance. We've got all kinds of challenges. We've got fundraising challenges with our existing providers. We've got new fields we've got to get into. We've got to have good services. We've got to have consistent services. We've got to have quality. And we've got to do all of this on an efficient and effective way. And we've got to make sure that the greatest asset we have, our VAs, and our lead VAs and our VAs out there, feel engaged and are appropriately part of the organization. So these are all big challenges, and we have to balance them all, and there'll be times when we might emphasize one over the other, but we recognize that all of these things are of equal importance, and we really are working hard to make sure that we get there. Just to leave you, and I'll hand over to Wendy in a second, to be clear, there are significant challenges in front of us, significant challenges. Next year, we need to renew our contract with, I won't get these acronyms mixed up, but AANDC, I think I've got it right this time, it seems to change every year. We need to renew our contract with them. The challenges around that, in that they're having funding cuts and they're transferring responsibility to other people and so on and so forth. So that's a challenge, and it's a big one. We have the CEDA bid coming up, as I mentioned. That action starts, now has started already, but the proposals are December. And 2013, end of, is when they actually come out. But there's lots of work to go there, and those are critical and major things for us. And at the same time, our diversification program and our work with Corporate Canada, the national program, the international program. These are big, big challenges. It's not easy. And I'm not here to say that it is, including the participation with other NGOs. So they are big challenges, but I'm very confident in telling you that we are much better positioned at this end of this year than we were at the end of last year. And just like in the United States, they say, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Well, I can tell you that we are much better positioned 1 year later than we were before. Financially speaking, position speaking within the NGO community, position speaking within the Corporate Canada community, we are much better. We are still early, but we are much better, and you should draw some confidence from that.